Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through all the digital noise and really get to the core of things, things you need to know to be well informed. Today, we're diving deep into, well, the foundations of cybersecurity, the basics that keep our digital lives, safe, fast, reliable. We've got a bunch of sources here covering security goals, managing risk, different kinds of controls, and something often overlooked: log management. Our goal today, to get past the buzzwords, unpack these ideas, see how they connect, and hopefully give you a few of those aha moments.
And that connection piece is so vital, isn't it? Because whether you're talking a tiny network or, huge cloud systems, these basics, they're universal. But people often miss how they interact, how focusing too much on one thing might actually create a problem somewhere else. We need that bigger picture.
Exactly.
A holistic view, not just definitions. Okay, so let's start right at the bedrock. The CIA triad. And no, not that CIA. This is confidentiality, integrity, and availability, the three pillars. But, in the real world, where do you see people struggle most with balancing these, or maybe focusing too much on just one?
Well, that's a great question because real security isn't about being perfect in one area. It's about keeping all three in balance. And it's tricky. Like if you make something super confidential, lock it down completely, well, maybe authorized people can't even get to it. That defeats the purpose, right? Availability goes out the window. Or you push really hard for availability, keeping everything online no matter what. And maybe you weaken integrity or confidentiality controls without realizing it.
Yeah.
It's always a trade-off.
Yeah, that makes total sense. It's like a constant balancing act, not just set it and forget it. Okay, let's break them down. First up, confidentiality. Simple idea. Only the right people get access. But we hear a lot about encryption. Is strong encryption really the magic bullet people sometimes think it is? What are the gaps? Encryption is definitely key. Turning plain text into ciphertext so it's unreadable without the key. It's fundamental. But that's not the whole story. Not by a long shot. We absolutely need strong access controls too. And that's not just one thing. It's really three steps. First, identification, saying who you are. Then authentication, proving it. Password, fingerprint, maybe one of those authenticator apps.
Right. MFA, multi-factor.
Exactly. And then finally, authorization. What are you actually allowed to see or do once you're in? If any of those steps are weak, like a bad password policy or permissions set up wrong, well, your fancy encryption might not help much. And there are other less common things too, like steganography, hiding data inside other data, like an image.
Hiding in plain sight, almost?
Sort of. Or obfuscation, making code really hard to follow without actually encrypting it. Adds layers, but shows how complex threats can be.
Okay, so it's not just the lock on the door, it's also the guest list and the security guard checking IDs. Now, if confidentiality is keeping the secret, integrity. That's about making sure the secret hasn't been, well, changed or messed with. Why is that just as critical? Maybe even more damaging sometimes.
Yeah, that's a really sharp point. If confidentiality fails, your secret's out there.
Right.
Bad, right? But if integrity fails, the data itself is wrong. It's corrupted, untrustworthy. Think about bank records. A tiny change could be disastrous. Or medical records. Imagine a wrong diagnosis because the data was altered.
Wow, yeah, the consequences could be huge.
Exactly. So we protect integrity mainly using hashing. Think of it like a digital fingerprint. It's a one-way calculation on the data. And the amazing thing is, change anything, even a single bit, and the hash completely changes. It's like a tamper-proof seal.
Okay, so you can instantly tell if something's been touched.
Pretty much. Then you have digital signatures and certificates, which help prove where the data came from and that it hasn't been altered. This ties into non-repudiation. Basically, you can't deny you did something if you digitally signed it. It provides proof.
That's crucial. Trusting the data is everything in so many situations. Okay, pillar number 3, availability. This is the one we feel most directly, right? When that app doesn't load or the website's down, what are the common misunderstandings about keeping things available and what really works?
Yeah, everyone feels availability or the lack of it. A common mistake is thinking just having a backup is enough. It's more involved. Availability means authorized users can get to the systems and data when they need it. Core strategies include redundancy, having duplicates of critical systems, fault tolerance, designing systems so they can keep running even if a component fails, and just basic good practice like regular patching. Unpatched systems are a huge cause of outages.
Right, closing those security holes. And there's an interesting difference you mentioned between scalability and elasticity. Can you unpack that?
Sure. Scalability is usually about manually adding more resources, beefing up a server with more memory, faster processors, more storage, more bandwidth. You plan for growth and add capacity.
Okay, like upgrading your computer?
Sort of.
Yeah.
Elasticity, though, is more dynamic,
Hmm.
usually automated. It's the system's ability to automatically scale up or scale out, adding more resources on the fly when demand spikes. And just as importantly, scaling back down when things quiet down. You see this a lot in the cloud. It saves money.
Ah, so it adjusts automatically to the load.
Exactly. And related to this is resiliency. This isn't necessarily about never failing like high availability sometimes implies, which can be super expensive. Resiliency is more about self-healing with minimal downtime. How quickly and gracefully can the system recover? Good examples are things like web server load balancing.
Hmm.
Traffic gets spread out, so if one server hiccups, the others just pick up the load.
Yep.
Or NIC teaming that's bonding multiple network cards together.
Hmm.
If one fails, the connection stays up. Even something as simple as having a second ISP, a backup internet connection. If your main one goes down, you switch over. It's about bouncing back fast.
So when your streaming app handles that huge audience for the season finale without crashing, that's elasticity and resiliency working together. It stops us seeing those awful service unavailable errors.
Okay, so we have the CIA triad. How do we actually protect it? That brings us to risk. We kind of know risk intuitively, but in cybersecurity, it gets broken down.
Yeah.
Threats, vulnerabilities, risk itself. How do these fit together?
Right, it's that relationship that matters.
Yeah.
Think of a vulnerability as just any weakness. Let's say software that hasn't been patched.
Okay, an open door.
Exactly. A threat is something that could use that open door, maybe
Yeah.
malware designed specifically for that unpatched software.
A potential danger. Precisely. And risk. That's the likelihood that the threat will actually exploit the vulnerability and what the potential loss or impact would be. So our job is risk mitigation. We put controls in place to make that exploitation less likely or less impactful if it does happen.
Controls. Okay, and these aren't all the same, right? They come in different types, different categories. You mentioned managerial, operational, and technical. How do those layers work?
Yeah, they form layers of defense. Managerial controls are the high-level policies and procedures, things like doing risk assessments to figure out where your dangers are, or vulnerability assessments to find those weaknesses we talked about. Penetration tests, where you hire people to try and break in ethically, fit here too.
So the planning and assessment layer.
Right. Then operational controls are the things people do day to day. Training and awareness for staff is huge. Setting configuration baselines so systems are set up securely. Media protection, how you handle USB drives or backups. And physical and environmental stuff, door locks, cameras, even making sure the server room has proper heating and AC.
The human and physical procedures. Got it.
And finally, technical controls. This is the technology you deploy. Encryption, antivirus software, IDS intrusion detection systems, firewalls. Applying the principle of least privilege, making sure users only have the minimum access they need to do their jobs, that's a technical control too.
And you need all three,
Yeah.
right? A great firewall doesn't help if someone clicks a phishing link.
Absolutely, they have to work together.
Okay, so those are the categories. But within those, controls also have different jobs, different types based on when they act during an incident. What are those types?
Yeah, we can classify them by their function. There are 6 main types. First, preventative controls. Their goal is simple. Attempt to prevent an incident from occurring at all. Examples: hardening systems, locking them down, training staff, like we said.
Yeah.
Physical guards, using strict change management so changes don't break things, disabling accounts that aren't needed anymore.
Okay, trying to stop it before it starts, but what if something gets through anyway?
Good question. That's where detective controls come in. They attempt to detect incidents after they have occurred. Think log monitoring, which we'll get to. Trend analysis to spot anomalies. Security audits. Video surveillance. Motion detection. The key thing here, they can't predict or prevent. They only tell you something has happened.
Okay, so they raise the alarm, then what?
Then you might need corrective controls. These attempt to reverse the impact of an incident. An active IDS might go beyond just detecting and actually block the malicious traffic. Restoring from backups is corrective. System recovery processes.
Fixing the damage. Makes sense. Now, what about deterrent controls? They sound a bit like preventative, but you mentioned a difference.
Yes, there's a subtle but important psychological difference. A deterrent control attempts to discourage someone from even trying to cause trouble. Think cable locks on laptops or visible hardware locks on server racks. Warning signs. The difference is, a deterrent aims to influence the decision. Ah, it looks too hard, I won't bother. Prevention physically stops the action.
Ah, okay. Like a beware of dog sign is a deterrent, but the actual fence is preventative.
Perfect analogy. And sometimes a control could be both. A security guard just standing there. Deterrent if they tackle someone. Preventative.
Interesting. What else?
We also have compensating controls. These are alternative controls you use when the main preferred control isn't possible or practical. Maybe your standard is smart cards for login, but a specific system can't support them. So you might use TOTP, those time-based codes from an app, as a compensating control for that system.
A backup plan, essentially.
Kind of. And finally, physical controls. Pretty straightforward. Any controls you can physically touch. Lighting, signs, fences, guards, locks, man-traps.
Wow, okay, so many different types, all working together, hopefully. It really is layers. And for you listening, think about these experts. You interact with them constantly. MFA on your phone, locks on doors, maybe even the security awareness training you had to take. Now, all these controls are great, but how do we know if they're working? How do we spot when something bad does slip through? This brings us to something absolutely crucial, but maybe less glamorous. Log files. These are the digital breadcrumbs, right?
Yeah.
The record of everything happening.
Exactly. Unsung heroes is a good way to put it. Logs are incredibly valuable. We use them for audits, figuring out what happened in the past, for discovering indicators of compromise or IOCs, those telltale signs that you've been breached or are under attack,
Yeah.
for deep forensic investigations after an incident, and for general alerting on suspicious stuff happening right now.
So when an analyst is digging through mountains of logs, what are they actually looking for? What's the key info?
Fundamentally, it's the when, where, who, what. So a network log might show, 22.02.20.20.21.24.17. It's the when, 10.10.8.5.49154, the source IP and port, the where and who, sort of. Connecting to 192.168.115.22, the destination, or an authentication log, 224.223.02.115, Homer, 192.168.1.20, action.login success. Okay, simple pieces of data, but when you put them together, and these logs, they come from everywhere, don't they? That must be a huge challenge.
Oh, absolutely. The sheer volume and variety is immense. You've got network logs from routers, firewalls, switches, system logs from the operating systems themselves, Windows, Linux, application logs from your software, security logs specifically tracking logins, file access, things like that, web server logs, DNS logs, authentication logs, even VoIP call logs, dump files when things crash. It's a flood.
So where do you even find all this stuff? Well, it varies. On Linux, a lot ends up in the varlog directory. Files like auth.log, syslog. Utilities like Logger or Journal Tactile help manage or query them. On Windows, you mainly use the event viewer. It organizes logs into channels like security for logins, deletions, system OS stuff, application program errors. Network devices, routers, firewalls have their own logging, often sent to a central place. The critical first step, though, is establishing a security baseline. You have to know what normal activity looks like in your environment across all these logs.
Right, so you can spot when something weird happens.
Exactly. Spotting the anomalies, the deviations from that baseline, that's where detection often starts.
But, okay, if you have logs flooding in from hundreds or thousands of devices, how on earth do you make sense of it? It sounds impossible for a human.
It basically is, at scale. That's why we have log management tools and, more powerfully, SIEM systems, security information, and event management.
SIEM, okay, break that down. What do these systems do?
Well, log management focuses on the collection, storage, and initial processing. Things like improving data quality by normalizing logs into a standard format, parsing out the useful fields, maybe filtering out noise. This can also help reduce costs by optimizing storage and what gets sent to the more expensive SIEM, and ensuring the logs are stored securely, maybe encrypted.
Cleaning up the data first.
Pretty much. Then the SIEM takes over for the heavy analysis. Think of it as the central brain. It aggregates data from all those different sources you mentioned: network, servers, apps, cloud, everything. Its real power lies in correlation. It looks for connections between events happening on different systems over time. Events that might look innocent in isolation but are suspicious when combined.
Ah, connecting the dots.
Exactly. It does automated alerting based on rules you define. It handles time synchronization, which is critical for correlating events accurately. It does event deduplication so you don't get spammed with the same alert over and over. And often, it stores logs in a worm format. Write once, read many. That means once a log is written, it can't be altered, which is vital for forensics and compliance.
So the SIEM is the detective looking for patterns in that massive data stream. How does it avoid overwhelming the security team with alerts? Or worse, missing something important? That sensitivity tuning sounds tricky.
It is tricky. Setting the right sensitivity levels is crucial. You're constantly balancing the need to limit false positives, those alerts about nothing, that just cause fatigue, against the absolute need to avoid false negatives, which is missing a real incident.
A missed alert could be catastrophic.
It could. That's why correlation's so powerful. a single failed login. Maybe ignore it. But the SIEM sees that failed login, immediately followed by a successful login from a totally different country, then access to a sensitive database, then a large data upload. The SIEM connects those dots from different logs, authentication, firewall, database logs,
Yep.
and says, hey, this pattern is highly suspicious. It generates one high-priority alert instead of maybe 3 separate low-priority ones. It provides context.
That makes sense. Turning millions of data points into something you can actually act on. And getting all this data to the SIEM relies on centralized collection, right? You mentioned syslog earlier, that old standard.
Yeah, syslog has been around since the 80s, a basic way to send log messages over the network. But we have more advanced tools now built on that idea. Syslog, started back in '98, is a powerful collector. It can normalize logs, filter them, reduce the noise, and reliably forward them to a SIEM, maybe using its own protocol like RLTP. Then there's Syslog, came along in 2004. Similar capabilities, but added things like direct database integration for storing logs. It's very common on Linux. And for mixed environments, especially with Windows, NXLog is really popular. It runs on almost anything Windows, Linux, Mac, Solaris, and is great at aggregating, filtering, and enriching logs before setting them off.
So these tools are the plumbing that makes large-scale analysis possible.
Absolutely. Centralization is key.
And once you've collected all these logs,
Yeah.
you have to keep them for a while, right?
Yeah.
Log retention, why is that so important?
Oh, definitely. Several big reasons. Auditing, you need historical records. Compliance, many regulations, think HIPAA, PCI DSS, GDPR, or local laws, dictate how long you must keep certain logs. And investigations. If you have a breach, you might need logs going back weeks or months to understand what happened, how they got in, what they took. You need that data preserved correctly. Maintaining the chain of custody for potential legal action. No logs, no investigation.
Got it. So compliance and being able to look back when things go wrong. Okay, before we wrap up, let's quickly touch on some of those practical, hands-on tools that security folks use every day. The stuff mentioned in the sources for basic network checks and file handling.
Yeah, the command line basics. You live in these sometimes. For network info, ipconfig on Windows or ifconfig in the newer ip command on Linux tell you your network settings. Netstat shows you active connections and listening ports, really useful. Tracert, or traceroute on Linux, shows the network path packets take to reach a destination. ARP links IP addresses to physical ME addresses on your local network.
And ping. Everyone knows ping, right?
The fundamental connectivity test. Ping a server to see if it's reachable. You can ping DG on Windows to ping continuously, or myc7 on Linux to ping just 7 times. Pinging a name like www.google.com also tests if your DNS name resolution is working. Linux has some fancier tools too, like Ch03, which can do more advanced packet crossing, even some port scanning. Papping on Windows is like Tracert and ping combined. MTR, my tracer wrote, on Linux is similar.
And for dealing with log files themselves on Linux?
Basic text manipulation is key. cat displays a whole file. grep searches for specific text within files, essential for finding events. Head shows the beginning of a file. Tail shows the end, often used with deff to watch logs in real time. And Drummond is for changing file permissions, a basic security task.
Good practical tools to know. And quickly, one common environment where all this comes together is the LMP stack.
Right, LMP. It's a classic, widely used open source stack for building web servers. It stands for Linux, the OS, Apache, the web server software, MySQL, the database, and usually PHP, Perl, or Python, the scripting language. Securing a LMP server involves applying basically everything we've discussed, protecting confidentiality, ensuring integrity, maintaining availability, implementing controls, and monitoring those logs constantly.
Wow, okay. We covered a lot of ground there. From the core CIA triad confidentiality, integrity, availability, and that tricky balancing act, through understanding threats, vulnerabilities, and risks, and then layering on all those different controls, managerial, operational, technical, and their functions, like preventative, detective, corrective. And finally, diving into the world of log files, how crucial they are, and how SIEM systems help us make sense of that massive data flow. It really feels like we've unpacked the fundamentals.
I think so too. And, in today's world, with so much data and such complex threats, getting these fundamentals right isn't just academic. Understanding these core principles, that's your best defense. It's the most powerful tool you have for building systems you can actually trust.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on. If pretty much every single thing we do digitally leaves a log, and if every log can potentially be collected, analyzed, correlated, what does that really mean? What does it mean for how we build the systems of the future, how we interact with them, and ultimately how much we can or should trust them? Think about how these security basics underpin almost everything you touch online every day. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.